This story happened to me a few years ago. Summer has always been my favorite time of the year, not because I love parties or drinking, but because I love nature and the outdoors. Every time the weather gets warmer, I spend more time outside. The night I want to tell you about, it was warm, and two friends and I decided to go hiking in a nearby nature preserve that is not far from my house. This forest is so large that even years later, I'm pretty sure I haven't fully explored it. Technically, it was illegal to camp in these woods, but we decided to take a chance. One of my friends, Chuck, was a huge camping enthusiast. He could tie hundreds of different knots and loved being outdoors. Jackson, our other friend, always brought booze with him, so evenings with him were always fun. We started our adventure late in the afternoon, getting into the woods by almost midnight. Chuck had brought a powerful flashlight with him, and we began setting up camp in a small clearing. After we built a fire and set up chairs, Jackson turned on some music and we had a fun time talking and drinking. However, after a couple hours, something broke our tranquility. Suddenly, we heard a loud whistling noise that made us wary. It was so loud that it seemed close, but at the same time it sounded like it was coming from far away. We stood in silence, trying to figure out what was going on. The forest suddenly became ominously quiet. Even the sounds of nature disappeared. It wasn't the usual noise of forest animals. The whistling sounded like a whistle in a sports arena. Chuck suggested we pack up and leave immediately, but Jackson and I decided to stay. We thought that if we started to leave, we might run into whoever was making that sound. We felt like someone was aware of our presence in the woods, and the feeling was frightening. We left the fire burning, hoping it would scare the animals away, but our anxiety was growing. A few minutes passed, and suddenly, something small flew over Jackson's shoulder and fell right into the fire. It was a firework that began to spark in the fire. We jumped up in terror and ran into the woods, leaving all of our belongings behind. We ran until we were exhausted. When we stopped, no one seemed to be following us, but the feeling of uneasiness did not leave us. We discussed what to do next. Chuck suggested we go back for our stuff, especially since the campfire was still burning. At first, I thought that was a bad idea, but then I agreed. As we approached our campsite, we noticed 3 strangers sitting in our chairs. They looked like statues, motionless and strange. Their faces seemed devoid of life, and something sinister reeked from them. When we decided to leave quietly, Jackson accidentally tripped over a rock, and one of these strangers instantly extinguished the fire as if he had covered it with a cloak. At that moment, we realized that they had spotted us. We ran again, this time not stopping until we reached Jackson's car. Luckily, we were not pursued. With each step, we felt the fear getting the better of us. The wind howled between the trees, and the shadows seemed alive, ready to grab us. We didn't dare look back, continuing our flight from the strangers who remained at the edge of our field of vision. Our hearts pounded, and our breathing was cut short when we finally saw the bright headlights of Jackson's car, which served as a beacon of hope. When we reached the car, we rushed inside, locking the doors behind us with a loud click. Jackson, with trembling hands, started the engine, and soon the noise of the engine drowned out the disturbing sounds of the forest. We sped away from the creepy place, feeling the adrenaline slowly fade away, leaving only the palpable fear and bewilderment of what we had just experienced. The next day, Chuck insisted on going back for his gear. When we arrived at the site, everything looked pretty much as we had left it, except for the horrible odor coming from his tent. Inside, we found a dead rat. It was an eerie sign, and from then on, I never went back to that forest again.